Hello, all. My name is Jake Tiernan. I'm a fourth-year landscape architecture student with minors in wildlife and fishery sciences and landscape ecology. So that's just to give a little bit of background on me and why I was so interested in looking at the city steps and the greenways that surrounded it, because what I saw there was a really unique opportunity to bridge Hazelwood's cultural history and the ecological factors that made it so interesting to me. So my site right now is the city steps that run right here from Sylvan Avenue to Gladstone Street. And I chose this site, like I said, because it was in the heart of the Greenway and also represented a significant cultural moment for Hazelwood in that the city steps used to be used to bring people from and to the factory. So this is just my table of contents, kind of what I'm going to talk about here in a second. So with my project goals, like I said, what I identified that was really interesting to me was the Greenway, because in the Greenway is something that not a lot of cities have, in that it provides really good habitat for wildlife and gives the community a really excellent opportunity to reach out and interact with that wildlife and inspire some more environmentally inclined ideologies. So what I wanted to do with my project is actually based it on two programs run by Audubon International and the National Wildlife Federation, which basically provide communities with the tools to build greener communities that are wildlife friendly and directly give back to them. So through that, Audubon International has done things with communities like Lawrence, Massachusetts, for example, where they help them to build an edible garden that also supports wildlife. So it also works as kind of an educational tool where it brings kids out to interact with wildlife in a new way and really focuses on youth outreach so that it becomes possible for these kids to look for jobs and look for education in conservation and environmental sciences, which are very lucrative fields right now. So how I thought about approaching it was that to get people interested in kind of these environmental ideologies that would help bring a new air to the community while building on existing things that already exist. The local youth should be the ones who are really targeted in engagement because they're going to be, the next generation of Hazelwood. So how do you teach them and get the community involved in a way that is relevant to them? So I looked at the really excellent youth art programs that are in Hazelwood through Center of Life and through the mobile sculpture workshop, for example, and said, here's two really good audiences that might be interested in each other. How do I merge those and use the historical aspect of the city steps and of the Greenway to bring that and ground it all in the identity of Hazelwood? So this is just some process things that I did. First for me was taking a look at what the scientific and ecological issues in the Greenway would be. So to do that, I actually used code and 3D models to simulate some things like erosion, water flow, and look, is the Greenway really at risk and how do we start to mitigate some of those problems? After that, I took notes, met with the community, heard what you had to say about it, what your concerns were. And then finally, I just kind of used 3D models to kind of iterate the two together and actually merge these ideas of what I know scientifically are the hard issues and what I know the community believes are the hard issues. And those are really the ones that I need to use to provide solutions to the scientific issues. So my solution was to actually immerse the community in the Greenway in a way that takes the natural sights, the natural sight lines from the city steps and really make them a prominent feature to draw people into the native ecology that I think makes Hazelwood so special. So what I'm suggesting is to actually build canopy walks and tree houses that the kids can use where they can directly go and be involved along the city steps in a way that may be a little more appealing to them since they never grew up knowing about the factory or experiencing it so much firsthand. Then along the city steps also would be a series of platforms, viewing platforms, that people could go to and they could just sit and relax and talk to their neighbor and actually just look out into the Greenway or look out along the Monongahela and see everything that Hazelwood has to offer. So this is kind of an example of that. This is a section cut of that canopy walk where you can see from this platform along the city steps, a rope bridge goes up and takes the kids to the treehouse where they're immersed in different levels of vegetation along the way. Now, going up those levels of vegetation, there are going to be different animals and different plant communities that they're exposed to. And mainly I focused on birds because Pittsburgh has a really astounding amount of avian biodiversity compared to other cities. So I thought that was another really awesome, unique aspect of Pittsburgh as a city and Hazelwood as a community, that they would support some birds that we normally wouldn't see in cities. So as you go up, when you start lower, you would see things like northern flicker that feeds on the ground and feeds in the lower canopy. But once you get to the top, you're going to be seeing things like red-bellied woodpecker and downy woodpecker that feed much higher in the trees, search for those insects higher up. And then, of course, you know, Hazelwood has its bald eagles. When I was there, I saw red-tailed hawks. Somebody told me about peregrine falcons. So there's an entire another group of birds that you're only going to see overhead. So what I really wanted to do was use this as an opportunity to bring those people, or to bring people into seeing these animals and just being exposed to how beautiful they are and how their sounds really add to that. And I did include a book of some birds that are easy to identify and will be common sights around Hazelwood as well. So this is just another view of that same canopy, but kind of taking a different perspective where invasive species were a major concern that the community expressed to me. So along these canopy walks, what I'm suggesting is the removal of invasive species and the planting of hardy, tolerant native species that can really withstand the post-industrial conditions in Hazelwood, as well as help to stabilize the slope in the greenways. So in the canopy, I want to focus on some really beautiful fall colors. So red oak, red maple, black locust, and silver maple all provide various shades of orange and yellow in the fall, so that once we're in the fall and we're walking along the city steps and seeing those things, there's this entirely different color palette from the spring, where the spring is really focusing on a lot of shades of whites and pinks. So these trees are a little bit closer to eye level when you're standing on the city steps. So these are things like serviceberry, Carolina silverbell, and mountain laurel that all have beautiful showy flowers that come out in the spring at different points. So in the fall, again, it's going to be a bunch of shades of red and orange, while in the spring, we're going to be seeing a lot of whites and pinks and things like that. So the final section here is just to show this idea that the city steps also should be accessible to everybody. Because they're such an essential piece of the history and the culture of the area. So what I am proposing is actually a wheelchair lift to take you from here to this platform, in which you're going to have a direct sight line to the Monongahela and over Hazelwood Green. So that just opens it up so that it's a little more accessible to everybody. The idea with that too is that any sort of ADA accessibility or handicap accessibility should not be an afterthought, but should be actively designed. So what I really did here was try and open up that view shed so that people would feel included in the experience of the city steps and get a firsthand look at it. This is a perspective from the canopy walk, so you can kind of see this rope bridge I was talking about and see how close you would be to the actual tops of trees, where birds like this red-bellied woodpecker would hang out and this blue jay. So again, just the purpose there is really to get people to think about how important the vegetation is, not only that it's just there, but how important the actual layering and vertical structures of the vegetation is as you go up. Here's just a view of the platform on the stairs where you can see how people would interact on them and be able to sit and enjoy the greenway a little bit more. So this is actually another part of what I was talking about with the integration of the youth arts groups into the city steps. So what I believe would be really interesting, since Center of Life already stresses teaching new technology through digital media, is actually using the city steps as a living art platform. So in the Louis Vuitton store in Japan, what they do is they project images onto their stairways. So in order to integrate the stairs and make them something special to the younger generation as well as the older generation in Hazelwood, what I'm suggesting is have Center of Life coordinate different digital media experiences that can then be projected down onto the stairs every Friday. So it's an ever-changing art piece that takes the city steps from just being an important cultural moment historically to being an important cultural moment currently, and an ever-evolving one at that, and one that really brings the community together around this new artistic identity. The second part of that is the sculptural elements made by the mobile sculpture workshop that I'm going to get to in a second. So basically, with this idea of habitat and art and functionality and how do we bring people into all of this, what I looked at was creating a sculptural element that would be reflective of Hazelwood's past. So this is supposed to mimic the coke stacks. And by day, what it is it's a planter that has Virginia creeper, which is a very popular forage plant for bird species. So this could be made by the mobile sculpture workshop. So their artwork is actually on display along the city steps where people are going to be interacting with it. And it's also going to provide really important habitat for birds like the chickadee. Now, this was kind of designed with the chickadee in mind because Carolina chickadee is an extremely smart bird and actually leads flocks of other birds like blue jays, northern cardinals, tufted titmouse, and finches to different feeding spots. So the inclusion of the sculpture is representative of the fact that not only is Hazelwood's past these coke stacks, but what it is currently is really fantastic habitat for a lot of animals. And it's just merging the two together while also providing something that the kids can have a direct impact in and showing the community their art. And then by night, what it's going to be is actually a way to mimic the coke stacks at night, as well as provide lighting along the city steps. So this red light feature will be built into these sculptural elements, and at night, the red will act as a way to mimic the old fires of Hazelwood's coke stacks. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for listening. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thank you.